And we want to start off this segment talking about what I think is a very fascinating topic. And that is dreams, dream interpretation. Why do we dream? What are the meaning of that? And there's a new book out, and it's called The Only Way Out is Through, and it's written by Dr. Gail Gross, who says that dream analysis can be used to successfully navigate life's major transitions by tapping into a deep part of the unconscious. Quote, consciousness is only part of who we are, just the tip of the iceberg. In fact, 90% of who we are is the unconscious, and the unconscious uses dreams to organize our environment to bring us to consciousness. So with that, I'd like to welcome Dr. Gross to the program. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. Nice to talk with you. I
nice
found your last segment very interesting and, in a sense, very organized towards the whole world and trying to go through a chaos to enter consciousness.
Well, and let me ask you this. So dreams are a way for, just another way for people to express themselves, I guess. And sometimes we can certainly understand what goes on during the part of the day where we're awake and energetic. But when we're sleeping and resting and dreaming, a lot of people have dreams and they don't take the time to analyze them and try to figure out what messages are there. So for people that want to start doing that, how do you recommend they get started?
Well, you know, we all dream every night. We just don't know it because the process of dreaming has a part of it that puts us in a type of coma so that we don't act out our dreams. People that have a problem with the biology of dreaming, the body gives off a particular hormone that slows us down and puts us in this semi-comatose position, and those people that have a faulty delivery of that hormone sleepwalk. And the danger, of course, in sleepwalking is that you act out your dreams. And so, in a sense, you would say that the unconscious is bleeding into consciousness without any inhibitor, and that's, of course, a dangerous position. But we all dream all night long, and we're unaware of it because that same hormone makes us, in a sense, forget our dreams. As we're coming out of our dreams in the morning, we start losing the little filaments, if you will, of memory. But if we consciously work at remembering our dreams, then the thing we recognize almost immediately is that there's a language to dreaming, a symbolic archetypal language that's similar to every single species, every single person in every part of the world, whether you were born in Asia or America or Europe. The symbology is quite similar. So there is a particular language of the unconscious, and the unconscious is always trying to talk with us and have a conversation. And so the minute we recognize the language, we then understand what the unconscious is trying to tell us.
Now, is it a good idea if people want to start trying to figure out their dreams and make sense of them and learn from them possibly, to have, let's say, a notebook or some sort of a journal whereby they write down their dreams when they wake up so they don't forget them?
Exactly right. And, you know, a perfect example of the importance of dreaming is very similar to what we're going through in our own culture right now. You know, when you dream, your unconscious is awakening you to the things that you project out onto other people in your life in your awake time because you're unconscious, you're unaware that these things are living within you. But the minute you become conscious, the minute you become aware of this language that your dreams are trying to teach you and the information it's trying to give you, you can stop and take a look at it, and then that information starts to help you rather than project out your patterns and your feelings from usually early childhood and your family of origin. And that now you can take a look at that information and what we call integrate that. In other words, put it back where it belongs in the unconscious consciously, so that you're aware of these parts of yourself and you no longer have to project them out. There's a great line in history. It's been rewritten in a million different ways, but basically the idea is, be careful of the enemy, because the absurdity of projecting out all your hostility like a stormtrooper on an enemy ultimately makes you become the enemy. In other words, you become the monster you project out onto. And so that's a perfect example of mob rule. And there's a great little movie called The Talk of the Town. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a 1942 George Stevens movie. But it's basically about this idea that people project all these things out onto other people. But consciousness makes you recognize that these things are part of ourselves. And when we don't project them out, then we are free. We have a chance to heal and become whole, because we're bringing back what we disown and push out onto others.
We're visiting with the author of The Only Way Out is Through, Dr. Gail Gross, talking about dreams and analysis of it. And you talk about how dreams can offer clues that can assist us in differentiating aspects of our personality and balance our sort of voices to meet life in a conscious way. How about recurring dreams, people that seem to have the same dream over and over and over again? What causes that?
You're asking me the best questions, Jeff. When you really
Thank you.
Wonderful questions. When a person has a repetitive dream, it's because the unconscious is really trying to get your attention. Quite similar to a nightmare. We all dream all night long. We all have approximately 5 sessions of what we call REM sleep, and it's in REM sleep that we have our dreams. And so when we're repeating a dream, many times, even in the same night, we just don't realize it, because the information is the same, just the themes of the dream change through these 5 sessions of REM. And in a sense, you would say 5 layers of the same dream. But we're dreaming over and over a repetitive dream, or, as I said, in the same evening, because the unconscious is really knocking on the door to our conscious mind, trying to get our attention. And it's saying, pay attention. This is important. And a good dream will tell you everything. It'll tell you what's up, and there's always a key in the dream, because there is a best way to handle what's up that's important to you in relation to your own unconscious. And, you said earlier the unconscious is most of who you are. That's actually right. And therefore, it knows really what is best for you if you just take the time to tune into it. And, of course, journaling is a wonderful way to see the pattern of your dreams and therefore unlock the mystery of what it is they're trying to tell you, the fabric of that puzzle. I had a professor who put all his dreams on a computer, and then he mapped, therefore, the arc of his dreams over the years, and he realized quickly that the arc of his dreams actually gave information to the future events that were to take place in his life. And following the dream gave him the best possible solution. So the unconscious knows everything, and a good dream will tell you everything if you learn the language.
So we don't have to go to a fortune teller. We can just listen to our dreams.
Like that. No, you're so right on. A fortune teller is a whole nother thing. It has nothing to do with empirical science, and dreams really do. In fact, Carl Jung, the great psychiatrist, and the student of Freud, spent his entire life proving the empirical information offered to one through dreams. And that, and the one thing that Freud and Jung agreed on was that the dream was the key to the unconscious, and the unconscious was really who we are. We all
We're
walk
visiting.
around. We
Go
all
ahead.
walk around in this ego, and we think the ego is who we are, but the ego is our function, and it's created by our unconscious.
We're visiting with the author of The Only Way Out Is Through, Dr. Gail Gross. And it's interesting that you mentioned Freud. I was a psychology major and did
That's
study.
why your questions are so great.
Well, I really enjoyed psychology, but my double major was political science, and I sort of went more in that direction. But I did think about psychology for a while, and my daughter is actually pursuing mental health counseling as one of her
Wonderful.
fields of endeavor.
Wonderful.
So what do you make now looking back at Freud all these years? And there have been many different people that have sort of discounted some of his theories, but he was revolutionary, wouldn't you say?
He's having a resurrection, frankly, because Freud was actually a neurobiologist. He was really a scientist, and he created, of course, the field of psychiatry, of understanding and even taking a look at the unconscious, because theoretically, of course, there were other people simultaneously, but theoretically he gave us the information that there was this unconscious. And now the things that he supposed but couldn't really take a look at, but he felt were going on, and the way that the brain operated according to neurobiology turns out to be true. So what he believed, we now can prove by the technology we have, the CAT scans and the MRIs and the ultrasounds. And so we can look at the brain, basically, and we can see how it operates. And so we know that there is an unconscious, and we also know that it impacts us. For example, when people are captive in terrorism, one of the things, or in any war, one of the ways that they torture people is what? To keep them from sleeping. They keep them up, and what they're really keeping them from doing is dreaming. And when they don't dream, what happens? The unconscious bleeds into the conscious mind, and people start acting out their dreams just like a sleepwalker. And so they become delusional. And so we must dream. We must dream because dreaming comes out of that part of the brain where we learn and where we have memory. And so we must dream to, in a sense, be healthy and functional. And we can see that not having a good night's sleep, for example, stresses the brain and makes you overproduce the stress hormone cortisol. And cortisol, for a temporary time, if it's just loss of sleep, changes brain architecture and impulse control and puts you at a deficit if you're at a board meeting or in a dialogue or in an argument, because you're moving more emotionally and less out of your prefrontal cortex, which is, of course, your executive function.
Dr. Gross, we only have about a minute, but I wanted to ask you about why some dreams turn into nightmares and are so terrifying to people. Most dreams seem to be ones that are pleasant or sort of regular, something that doesn't have an impact that really creates a lot of stress and anxiety. But nightmares obviously are different. And what causes that? Is it just what's going on in a person's life that's causing this anxiousness that turns into nightmares?
Well, your questions are fantastic. And a good dream, a good nightmare really, is because you're not paying attention to your dreams and you're not translating that symbolic language so that you can recognize those parts of your personality that you are projecting out onto others, or part of your persona that you're projecting out. When you're projecting out, you're unconscious. So there's a split in the psyche. And in a sense, that split needs to be, those disowned pieces need to be conscious and therefore integrated back deliberately. But that tension that builds up because you're not paying attention to your dreams, you're not integrating those disowned parts of yourself, that tension becomes, in a sense, a generating process of renewal. And it actually creates the nightmare because the psyche is struggling to get your attention And by not listening to it, it builds up an inner pressure, if you will, which is a natural process in the psyche. And so that pressure becomes your nightmare. And in a sense, it's meant to regulate your conscious attitudes and, of course, the things we compensate for, what we call our compensatory function. So once we pay attention to what the dream is telling us, we translate the importance of the information. We can look at what we're disowning, what we're projecting out onto others, bring it on home consciously, and then the tension subsides. And in a sense, you would say you're bringing back disowned material, which is where all the fertility of your life really is. The energy you use to hold down or suppress information from yourself is your creative energy. But the minute you bring it to consciousness and you bring it back, you have your libido restored, you're renewed, you have all this energy back, this creative energy. And so the nightmare is basically the buildup of that tension until you ultimately pay attention and bring it to consciousness.
And with that, Doctor, we are out of time. I could do this for hours with you, and we certainly want to have you back on.
You're great, Jeff. I can tell your psychology background. I do want to recommend to you and to your listeners the old movie of 1942, The Talk of the Town, by George Stevens. It'll show you this sort of mob rule that we're kind of looking at now, and it'll help you to look at in a sense, the people not listening to opposing viewpoints and the lawlessness that we're seeing. And
it concerns me very much. And we're going to be getting into that in the next segment. But thank you, Dr. Gross. We definitely want to have you back on.
Thank you, Jeff. Bye-bye.
Great job on the program. Very, very interesting topic and very thoroughly explained by our expert guest, Dr. Gail Gross. The book is The Only Way Out is Through. Fascinating. All right, we'll come back. Brian Maloney is going to check into the media equalizer in our final segment right here on Ringside on WGSO.